So welcome on in. Of course, today I have joining me emongg, which he's been around a while. We know emongg, but we got Alec Dawson, our lead hero designer, bottom right camera for me, and then we got Kenny, my top left, the game producer. Also, I forgot to give you guys time to say hi. My bad.
Yeah. How's it going, everybody?
Hey, how's it going?
We did it last time too. We don't let you say hi. We just go into it.
Yeah, we just railroad the whole thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, we're here to talk about a little bit about manga and talk about tanks in general a little bit. So looking forward. Did you hear someone just fell asleep on my doorbell? I don't know if you guys just heard
I heard
that.
that. I did hear that.
I don't know what's at my house, but I did not order any packages. But yeah, we're gonna talk a little bit about manga today. Patch notes just came out. Where do you want to start? Do you want to start with patch notes? We're going to talk about maybe what we learned before the patch notes from like the play test.
All right, we'll start off with this. All right, so Mauga, what has been the journey to get to Mauga being into the game now, and why did it take so long? Because that has been a hero that for years people have been thinking every new hero release is going to be Mauga. What's the journey to get here?
So Mauga, obviously was an instant hit with players and the team when introduced into the lore. And then making a character that kind of lives up to those high expectations can be a bit more challenging than when we start off from, a blank slate. We kept coming up for ideas with the kit that was, fun and exciting, but those abilities weren't really vibing with Mauga as a character. And they were actually a lot more telekinetic in nature and inspired Sigma. While we were doing that, realities of the timeline kind of set in, and we had a choice, do we create Sigma, which we have these awesome abilities for, or do we delay and kind of, hope to come up with something more Mauga before we kind of hit event horizon where it's hey, you got to put something into production quick. And, the answer for Sigma was kind of right there. So we went with that. Our pipeline was a bit different back then during Overwatch 1. So we kept developing him in the background, but we had to, focus on other characters for other, roles. And we just kept, adding a little bit more to him, taking away a little bit more, ideating, play testing, going back and forth, but had to continue with the schedule that we had. We didn't really have an opportunity to full focus fire on Mauga until late 2019. Then, the pandemic happens. You have to figure out how to work from home, bunch of new teammates, old teammates, people switching around, doing different things. And we originally had him slated for, I think, season 2. We kept getting feedback that we were just right there with the abilities and the kit and the look and the feel and some of the technical challenges that we had to solve, but we could use a little bit more time. And we had Ramatra in our back pocket, who was actually already done. So we made the call to, switch Ramatra for Mauga, and just to give us that little bit of extra time to get, really all the way there. And yeah, now he's in a place that we're totally excited for. We solved, a few of the kit issues, added some new stuff, took away some old stuff, and really, really excited to, see where he came out.
Yeah, and as Kenny said, it's not necessarily we switch Ramatra and Mauga doesn't mean we're working on Mauga for a year. Some of that work picks back up later on. Might be hey, we might need a month of design time to really figure this out and lock this down. But then we look at the hero schedule and, we don't want to do back-to-back tanks. We want to make sure to get some supports in the roster to bolster that role in particular. So we'll slot Mauga into next year, right? A lot of times our schedule's pretty fluid in that sense. Just even, heroes we've swapped around recently, just internally, just because of, where they end up, where we might need more time. So that's something we talk about pretty frequently. And it could be hey, we need an extra 3 weeks. What does that look like? Doesn't mean it's, a whole 3 months of extra work. It's just 3 weeks here of active work, and then that moves on a little bit later. If that makes sense.
Learned a lot on that one. I love that. Knowing that, we could have had we'd be maybe getting Sigma this tomorrow if it wasn't for going that direction. It could have been a completely different roadmap on that. I love hearing those stories on that too. That's awesome. Flats, what do you got?
Timeline.
What do you got?
We could have been in a timeline where we didn't have double shield.
yeah, true.
That would have been crazy. Yeah, I mean, we learned about some of the challenges there with Mauga. He definitely seems like a hard hero to kind of design in a lot of ways, especially non-shield heroes. I'm sure have a lot of challenges with them. Because one of the big things people were kind of talking about recently in the community is counter picking and whatnot. But just wondering, did you guys learn a lot from the BlizzCon playtest? Because I know myself and many others thought it was a very, very good thing. It was cool to let the community try out the hero early. And, you know, I remember when we were streaming, we co-streamed from BlizzCon, and we didn't get a chance to try him. And people were just spamming like, "Oh, he's broken. He's so strong. He's broken." And then I got home and I was like, "What in the world are you guys talking about? Like it's not feel broken at all." So, you know, what was the biggest takeaway, I guess? And
Yeah,
you learn a lot.
Yeah, just watching how people play Naga, and sort of, you know, what their learning curve on the hero is. I think initially, you know, in Overwatch, a lot of people, when they're playing tank, they sort of want to be front and center, and as they learn Malga, that may not be always the place where you want to be, or charging in a lot. we saw a lot of that, sort of diving in, want to, you know, get 5 people in the ultimate or something, or with Overrun being a bit more reckless, not using it as an escape as much. But seeing just overall, you know, how he's performing in terms of where were some of the weak points as well with survivability. That's the main thing with these patch notes, that we are increasing that a little bit in a few areas, and just seeing, you know, where he's doing well, where he's excelling. I think Malga in particular can be extreme in places, you know, if there isn't something to shut him down, if he does have a lot of sustain behind him and he is just in the mix, he can be very, very, very difficult to take down. And just seeing how that played out as well, you know, in terms of like how much of a tank buster he was too. So I think overall, though, we learned that we're just going to keep doing this with heroes, the trials in particular. We're still figuring out the details of exactly how we want to go about it and the timing of it. But it was something I think that was very good for us in terms of learning something, and also good for the players to get like a nice early look at something as well. So we'll be doing that in the future. Just got to figure out exactly how you want to do it. If we want to do it just how we do it with Malga, or do it a little bit differently.
I like that. That's good.
Yeah, I was gonna ask that at one point too, if that was like something you were gonna continue to do with that.
Yeah.
I know I like that too. So that means that there will be some way to eventually try out, what is it, Venture is the next hero before the release of Venture.
That's what we want to do. Yeah, totally.
Yep.
Okay, that's good to know. I'm actually that was definitely gonna be a question we asked, so that's really, really cool. I do have a quick question too, because you've always said that you've wanted to aim towards the safe side of strong. Do you think that Malga's now on that safe side of strong, or do you think that a little bit past that safe side of strong?
So when we were looking at his performance, I mean, obviously it was quick play data over, you know, a short period of time, but I don't think he was necessarily weak. I think we were looking at, okay, he's probably ending up in a pretty average spot overall. So this is definitely on that safe side. If anything, I think it's when there's some of the things we are increasing, it can be almost like, oh, if maybe I should be a little scared. Maybe someone should be a little scared of like his release. But sometimes I think that's a good feeling to have, right? But there are some things like, you know, in terms of cardiac overdrive going up in the lifesteal percentage, like that can make a big difference, right? Or just having a bunch of armor. It's like, is Malga really going to be able to be taken down without, you know, getting antied or getting discorded and things like that? And how does he perform when those things are present? So those will be some of the things that we'll be looking at. But yes, I do believe he's on that safe side of strong for his release.
That's good. That's good to know. I mean, listen, as a tank player, I'm going to be a bit biased. I'm going to be like, yeah, that sounds great. I'm sure that other roles will not quite agree with me on that one, but you know.
Yeah, I don't think Malga has the, you know, if he gets you one-on-one, you're going down, like, for sure.
Okay.
I think as long as like Alari, like when you guys did great with Alari, where like tuned her back before she had comp and, you know, had all the data, I think it's more than fine. A lot of people have their fun for 2 weeks.
Exactly.
Okay. Now you talked about like having these heroes that can kind of like counter a tank, right? And then this is going to go a little bit away from Malga. Well, a little bit towards it. Are you going to start using tank passes in the future a bit more to be able to like kind of help compensate for some of the things? Like, for example, like the CC's been an issue for tanks because you constantly get CC'd. And are you looking into ways to help with that with tanks? Or actually, let me word this a little bit better. A while back, it was mentioned that CC's being reintroduced to the game. How do you feel now looking back at where CC is and the soft CC that was mentioned? Like, how do you feel about it now since the re-release of like bringing CC back into the game, or more of it?
Yeah, I think we've been pretty soft there and conservative there overall. You know, I think when we talk about some of the CC that got added, you know, it's really like, okay, Maze changes in season 5, right? And then some of the Cassie stuff. If anything, I think both of those things actually made those characters like overall weaker too. But we pulled back on some of them too as well. We reverted the May stuff. I think Cassie we're going to be taking a look at overall. We're still not necessarily super happy with where he's at and overall like how his kits perform. Where his kits like how it feels to play his kit overall. I think there's still some cohesiveness we'd like to make sure isn't reintroduced. So you know he's worth a look, but I don't think any of this LCC. I don't think we're in a place where it's necessarily what got added, because if you look at what got added from the start of the game, it's really just a few things, right? I don't think that's necessarily taken over the top. I think the game has just sort of evolved in a way that players are playing it differently as well, and they understand, how Overwatch 2 and its how the speed of it and how they play around cover is a little bit different than they were, when the game first launched, right? I think people just kind of learned, and we've seen some of that more pop up. Right, they're like, oh yeah, Doomfist is blocking. Okay, time to make sure I spear him, as a reset and stuff like that. So there's a lot more that you're just kind of probably feeling that on the receiving end as well.
Yeah, I think that's mainly the reason why I asked that, because as a tank, I face tank like 90% of the abilities in the game. So I was just curious on where you were at with that. I'm fine with that. I'm chilling.
So I have a follow-up too.
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah.
So it's very interesting because you're saying like as people have like learned and adapt, which I agree with. I kind of think that like for example, the support passive way back in the first or second beta, it was like second beta I think it got added, or first beta, I don't remember. It was like when it got buffed because of the old DPS passive where you moved faster. It was like you kind of needed it.
Mm-hmm.
And then like as like people have learned how to play, now like tuned it back recently and whatnot. I wonder almost then for some of the things emongg was talking about, because CC definitely feels like a pain point, especially as the solo tank, right? Like you're gonna absorb most of it. And even though it might not be a lot of things that were added, like just random mid fight, like you're like, okay, I knew, I just watched them whip shot, like I can go in now. Oh, they have rally. Now I got stunned. Oh, I still died. Now that like people are learning how to play it better and it's progressing, does that mean maybe there'll be a second look at some of these things? Or is there like a philosophy of like, now that players have learned certain characters or learned how to play the game a little bit better, certain things will get changed based off that?
Yes, we are going to be taking a big look at some of those things. I think we might be approaching it a little bit different in terms of, is it sort of CC thing, but Season 9, we're doing our competitive refresh and everything, but we're also looking at making some more fundamental changes to the game, and we're going to try to be doing that in that sort of cadence where, hey, start of a new Overwatch year, what are some bigger changes we can make system-wide to the game that make the game just feel different to play, right? So right now we are internally testing some things. I think particularly looking at, I would say, some of the burst damage in the game. I would also say some of the, reliance on some of that burst healing as well. So seeing if we can soften, how powerful both of those can be. I think a lot of times, if you get CC as a tank, is sometimes you feel like then you blow up afterwards, right? And it's like, well, okay, maybe you get self-CC'd, but then you don't blow up afterwards. What does that look like? How does that feel? So that's one of the things we're looking at right now, but there will be some fundamental changes to the game, just systemically in Season 9 that we're still figuring out. We have a good direction right now, and, looking at both the healing and the burst damage overall. I'll let people kind of infer what that may mean, but we're still trying to lock it down right now.
I was going to say, I'm sure that was a really fun question to answer, because I know there's probably a lot there that you want to talk about, but you can't.
Yeah, there's also stuff like, hey, we're looking at the DPS passive too, and like how can that be more meaningful? And I think this one in particular was something that was more meaningful. Like right when it launched, we had the speed one before too, but didn't really feel very good when it was messing up your aim. How can we give them something else that makes DPS to play a little bit better? So that's our opportunity in Season 9 to really evaluate a bunch of those things and see how we're doing and how we can change some bigger things that just create bigger shakeups than normal balance changes, right?
I love the
sound
of that.
Yeah, I was gonna say that sounds great, because you kind of can get stuck in that, just like it's the same thing with that. So that's really, really cool.
Yeah.
And I also want to point out, side note, I love that we're talking about like what you would call like an odd season, like Season 7, Season 9, and we're talking about these major changes. I love that now, like these Season 9 is now amped up to be like this season that is not just like, okay, well, Season 10's the next hero. So I love that you're also doing these like major changes in between seasons of heroes, because that's like super important. And I'm just glad to hear that you're doing like these major changes, comp, and now whatever these fundamental changes to the game are. So I love that. More plans for that too, with like future seasons too, like Season 11, etc.
Probably not like immediately after. It's more, I think, for like those types of systemic changes, like I think that maybe would be like a once or twice a year sort of thing, where it's like those are going to be bigger. It's going to take a little bit longer to figure out. It's also going to take a little bit longer for players to really figure out how that changes the game too. So I wouldn't like immediately want to shift something like that.
I like that though, because
that
now
frequently.
it's like you kind of relearn some stuff, which is pretty cool. I like that.
Exactly.
Same.
What do you got, Flax?
Breaks out of that gameplay loop sometimes you get stuck in. And to be honest with you, I think it's a really good thing. I like when that happens. So speaking of actually talking about like new characters and talking about like how things are changing, there's been a lot of like movement, like new like movement tech's been added to Overwatch 2. We had the Maga's is Charge, Swift Step, Junker Queen Shout, Lifeweaver Dash, etc. It seems like a lot of the future heroes are going more towards that movement route. Is that something we will expect or should expect more of? Is it like are we trying to like say like the game should be a little bit more faster pace almost? Because like I think of some characters like Cassidy, right? Like Cassidy, I think is like a very slow hero. Yeah, you have roll, but you don't roll for movement, right? So just wondering if that's like maybe part of the new philosophy, or because dive was one of the old metas that everyone loved, right? So capture a little bit of that.
Anyone take this one?
Yeah, I can take it. So our next couple of heroes, I'll say, have some interesting movement mechanics. Like obviously we all saw Venture during BlizzCon and saw what that kind of movement can look like. I think the team is focusing more on how do we make those movement abilities more meaningful, right? Like there's, without giving away the farm on Venture, there is some integration with their burrow and how that interacts with Drill Dash, for example, which is another ability that I can't remember if we talked about during BlizzCon. But yeah, like our next couple of heroes definitely have some movement. I wouldn't necessarily call it like a philosophy shift towards movement or how that makes the game a little faster. I don't know if Alec feels different though.
I think one thing, yes, the number of our heroes in the future have some sort of movement ability. I think one thing though, that we've learned over time is, hey, if a hero doesn't have a movement ability, there's a lot to compensate there for in terms of making that something that's going to feel really good. And a lot of times you see that can be very difficult to get in the right spot. At the same time, I don't want to be for us in a place where it's like, all right, everybody gets the movement ability, everybody gets this, because that feels good, and then it's just like the heroes end up becoming too similar to each other. Like part of what we love about Overwatch is that the heroes feel very different from each other. So we want to make sure that we're continuing to strive for that in all of our designs. So there will be some heroes that don't, right? And there will also be some heroes that just we think about a little bit differently, rather than just like, oh yeah, movement ability feels good, let's give it to him. Because I think that's just like a little bit, it can just be rather easy. You can kind of fall into that trap, I
actually have a quick follow-up to that too. Well, it's more like, so with Mauga, you saw that you can do like these really cool combos with also Ashe and Torb, where like those heroes benefit that hero. Is there more plans for heroes to have like another hero help benefit that hero in that way? So for example, when you dynamite someone as Ashe, now your, what is it called, volatile chain gun can now crit them the whole time. Is there plans to have more of those type of interactions with heroes?
I think so. Some of those are, they can be sort of serendipitous in a way. I think that one's really nice, and there's a little bit more of that. I think more we'll be looking at sort of, how can heroes just have more utility that benefits their allies, and some of the heroes take advantage of that a little bit differently than others, right? That'd be sort of the way we'd be looking at it.
Okay. I'm just curious. I do like that. It was fun. I like that you can Torbalt somebody, and now you can crit them because they're in the Torbalt.
Yeah,
I like that.
With Torbalt?
Yeah, you can do that with Torbalt. So if
I didn't work with Torbalt.
Yeah,
that's
if
cool.
someone's walking in Torbalt and you're on Mauga, that's all crits the whole time. So you're good to go. Yeah, I love that addition to that. I'm trying to think of one thing. Okay, one thing I hear I'm just going to ask is people. I've been asking this about Sigma forever. Is there a chance eventually with Sigma you're going to be able to cancel your eat? And what I mean by that is because you use your eat and you have to use your rock, but a lot of heroes can use their abilities to just, as a Rissa, you can javelin spin, you can stop your javelin spin, you can, get rid of your gold, etc. So I've always wondered if it was possible for Sigma to have that. Yes, you can cancel with a rock, but the trade-off you would get if you cancel Sigma's eat, obviously, is you won't get the shield and that cooldown reset. So.
Yeah, we like where it is currently with sort of being able to like make that choice, and it's like very clear to everyone. It's like, okay, Sigma's doing this. So that's what we currently like about it. I think over time we'll revisit that, see if we want to do an animation update or anything. But I think currently it's a good thing that we like. Hey, Sigma's kind of locked into this, and there's the part at the end where he gets all the health. So I think changing that sort of changes how that ability works fairly fairly largely, in terms of being able to like figure out how to attack him and things like that. So
Well, what I do appreciate is that your nicest way of saying no to that, and I'm totally, I'm totally fine with that, dude. I had to ask because we gotta at least get one.
It gets asked, but like even internally too. So.
Yeah. We gotta get the. I had to get the bias Sigma question in there. Flats, you got any biased hero questions now?
I don't have any biased ones. I was gonna ask how's Hog been? Because you were saying like canceling abilities now that you can, redo your heal after you get slept every fight. I was wondering how's Hog been shaping up?
Take this. Hog's been doing very well. I think performance-wise, at least, speaking from that perspective, he's doing quite well. We've been seeing just players have a lot more fun on Hog. They feel like he can last in the fight fairly well. His damage and his kill potential is risen since where it was before, not before the initial nerf last year, but definitely where he was from before. Seeing where people have like been doing with the trap and everything. So we're actually happy where Hog is right now. It's probably one of the biggest jumps we saw in performance like ever from a hero in terms of balance changes. Like he was kind of in the gutter for a little bit in terms of how effective he could be, and we've seen just players be a lot more effective on him. We're not doing any changes to him at the start of Season 8. We're going to wait and see sort of like how Malga shakes up everything. I think Malga and Hog have a very interesting matchup. Malga can give him a very hard time. So we're going to wait and see how that plays out and see if we want to make any more adjustments. But right now we're fairly happy where Hog landed. I think those initial buffs in that first week actually helped a lot. To take a breather.
It's interesting. Have you seen a good win rate across all ranks with Hog? And I'm only curious because like obviously as like you, like how's Hog in top 500 comparison to like Silver and things like that?
He jumped up initially like to the highest of all tanks. After that buff. So right when he came out, doing pretty well. We buffed him a little bit more to take a breather changes, and he settled a little bit, but still like top 3, I think, in every rank threshold.
Wow, I'm actually surprised by that. That's interesting because I'm sure you've just seen a lot of Sigmas being played in ranks.
Yes, I mean Sigma's. I think Sigma is very strong at the top for sure, especially when you get the right map in particular, things like that, right?
Yeah. So, 100%. See, that's the thing too, is map based too. I talk about that all the time because that can happen with matchmaking too, where like you can have the perfect game, but if it's map dependent based off of what people can play. And now I have a question about a hero that I'm sure people want to know about Wrecking Ball. Is there any? How's Wrecking Ball doing? Does it look like Wrecking Ball is going to go some changes eventually, or how are you feeling on Wrecking Ball?
So we're definitely in the process of, I'm trying to do my most producerly, lawyery voice ever. We're in the process of evaluating what we want to do with Wrecking Ball, right? We're kind of in that initial prototyping phase of if we were to do a rework, what would that look like? No promises or anything like that. Could be a rework, could be an upgrade, but we're definitely taking a look at Wrecking Ball right now.
Yeah, there's a number of heroes where we're trying to figure out in the next and this month and the start of next year where it's like, okay, what's our plan for 2024 of some of these heroes in terms of like bigger changes? Does anything need to be reworked? Does anything need some sort of adjustment? And there's this short list of heroes, and Wrecking Ball is near the top of that, and some of the things we want to look at. I think we'll sort of like look at him in a similar way where it can be, hey, a lot of players have a lot of hard time playing with Wrecking Ball on their team, and so we're just trying to establish like what sort of goals we're really trying to achieve there. I think we don't want to take away how special Wrecking Ball is. He is probably the most unique hero we have in the game. He's the mobility, be able to master that and everything is just something that you don't find anywhere else, right? It's a skill that players have really learned over time. But how can we make it so he fits a little bit better in 5v5? How can we make it so that players feel they're just a little bit happier having a Wrecking Ball on their team, when they get matched up with a random one that they're necessarily, not playing in a 5-stack or something, right? I think that can be really difficult to understand what you're even supposed to do for plenty of our player base. You're laughing a little bit there.
I mean, I'm just laughing because I'm just thinking of Flats playing Wrecking Ball and ranked, and what the teammates are thinking at that point.
This is okay. So I get my bias question now. Now I got it. Because we're talking about super unique characters, I kind of think of something that honestly, maybe I'm a little bit mean, but it's not that unique, is almost Ryan. It kind of, at least at the high level play, it's like either he's like broken, like really strong, like has to like, be buffed and like take over, or just like really just falls behind the rest. But on the the metal ranks, like your bronze to like plat, diamond, I know people love to play Ryan. Like it's their favorite tank out most of the time because it embodies what tanking is, right? Like big shield, big hammer man. But sometimes it just feels like you're a couple steps behind because we were talking about hero synergies earlier. But playing Ryan, especially like higher up, feels like unless you have certain picks on your team, you can't even select that hero. So I know probably on the lower end of that list of looking at characters that maybe need a little help, not like rework, but maybe just like something's up there. Have you thought about anything for Ryan, or is it on your radar at all as like he's either dominant or not really played well, or at least perceived as not being able to play well?
I didn't think we saw him quite a bit, in some of the owl stuff, like towards the end of the season, and everything too. So I think Ryan just needs some things to sort of come together for him meta-wise at times, and we'll see if some of the bigger systemic changes in Season 9, help him out. I think those systemic changes will help tanks overall out in particular, so he should be able to benefit there, but nothing in the short term, at least. Like I think we feel relatively happy about where Ryan is.
Welcome to the club, Flats. It was nice. It was a very nice no. And welcome to the... I do think one thing about Ryan too is I feel like players also know how to play with Ryan a lot more. So sometimes the win rate will be good because players know how to play behind a Ryan shield. It goes back to the discussion about like Wrecking Ball. You don't have no idea how to play with a Wrecking Ball. I mean, half the people playing Wrecking Ball don't know how to play Wrecking Ball. I don't know how to play Wrecking Ball, right? Like, so it's like, if you run into this kind of issue where I can see the Ryan win rate being higher too, because players just know how to play behind a Ryan shield. It's a play style that's... But yeah, I just... But welcome to the club, Flats.
Thanks, buddy. Appreciate it.
Okay, well, our heroes are... I'm trying to think what else we have on this one. So tanks overall, you said in Season 9 are going to be feeling a lot better. Are some of the changes you're making right now already kind of getting towards that, like Winston ignoring armor? Actually, no, I'm fishing too much for questions here. I'm not going to go anywhere. I'm fishing too much. I don't want to put you in that spot. I'm fishing too much.
What about some Malga stuff?
I'm down for Malga. Okay.
Yeah.
How long are you looking for another like 2-week nerf or buff on Malga? If the hero ends up being too strong, like are you looking to like when Malga goes into ranked, make another adjustment to the balance if you think you need to, or are you going to wait till mid-season?
Oh, we'll do something before we go off for the holiday for sure.
Yeah, true.
So it could even happen, within a week. It could be 2 weeks. Just depends on like what we're seeing from feedback-wise from the community, what we're seeing in our our data, what we're seeing just from our own observations. So we'd like to definitely do something before, at least make a decision on that before we go for the holiday. That there'll be some sort of changes. But I think any sort of hero release within the week or within a week or 2 weeks, that's something we just we want to evaluate and then be immediate in terms of our response, because before that hero goes into comp, we want to make sure they're in a really good spot.
See, we always love hearing the immediate response now, because that used to not be a thing with a lot of balance. So when we hear there's an immediate change to a hero, if they're too strong, that's good. Like I love the idea of that. So I'm excited to hear that. Also with Malga, what are your expected counters and comps that you would, if you're somebody loads in tomorrow and they're like, okay, I'm going against a Malga and they're just running all over me. What is a suggested comp that you would want to see or you would go to prevent that hero from having any fun?
Kenny, what do you think there?
Typically, when I'm playing Malga, I hate to see a Zen, even though the recent changes to Discord have been pretty welcome for tanks. Running into a Zen on it can be kind of fun if you can time your run right and make it so you ignore sleep. But yeah, as soon as you stomp, you're kind of an easy target. Who else do I hate to see whenever I play Malga? Playing against a Bastion can kind of be a feast or famine kind of thing, where it's like, he goes into turret, he's a little bit, vulnerable in his turret form, but you have to kind of, am I going to be able to crit through this damage that Bastion is going to do, or am I going to get wrecked if I peek out from behind this wall? It's kind of a calculation you have to do in your head. So if I see any of those three, I'm a little bit on edge.
Yeah. I think D.Va and Sigma can give him a hard time too, nullifying his damage in particular. Anyone that can do that fairly well can have a good time against Malga. But yeah, As Malga, someone that can sit, I like playing with Lifelever because it lets me be a little bit more reckless with some of my overrun. Lifelever's gonna pull me out. You can do some really silly stuff with the ultimate as well, like trap the enemy team, pull Malga out, and they're still trapped inside. Stuff like that. So I think that could be a lot of fun.
All right, can't wait.
With
Oh, go ahead, Flats.
the overrun specifically, maybe it was just a skill issue on my part because I didn't get to play him that much, and to be honest with you, I was jet lagged as all hell. But it felt like when I was doing the overrun, like when I nailed people dead on, like as if I was pinning them on Rhine, they wouldn't slam them; they'd actually just pop up. Was that intentional? Like, or is it like you're supposed to nail them dead on, or you're supposed to go to the side? Like, how does that interaction really work?
If you land on top of them, you should get the knockdown, and then anyone around that in the radius, they'll get knocked up.
So it was the opposite. Okay.
Yeah, so it's like a crit basically. If you land right on top of them.
Yeah, you'll get like a crit hit indicator if you do it just right.
Okay. I actually,
Good to
you
know.
mentioned a hero, Bastion. How's everything been going with Bastion? I only asked because I know that I keep hearing that in some ranks, it's just how quickly before someone goes Bastion. That's what I've been hearing. Is that, how is Bastion doing? Are you happy with where Bastion's at? I know it's a little bit away from Alga, but the counters there.
Yeah, we're overall fairly happy after some of the recent nerfs and everything. I think making Grenade feel a lot better was something that was important to us, and I think overall, if you look at the changes that we kept in versus ones we didn't, I think Grenade feels better. His Sentry form feels a little bit better as well. So that to us has been good. I think there's still maybe down the road like some quality of life stuff for Bastion, but it's one of those things where I think after all those buffs he initially got, it's maybe some perception in fighting against like how strong he was then versus how strong he is now. But I do think he's a bit weaker nowadays than he was there.
That's good. That's good at least. I will say the grenade now from Bastion's a lot more fun to play against than it was when you first did the change there. It was like, oh, this is not ideal. So I'm glad to hear that.
I got a bit of a heavier one that might
a heavy one
somewhere else. But
all right.
So this is for Maga, but so the concern is I would say for a lot of people is that like at high level play Maga might struggle. I mean, at the moment looking at the stats, like maybe not just because like everything's so high, but like I'm assuming he's gonna get tuned back a little bit after that first 2 weeks. Kind of like how Hog struggles in a lot of ways, or in the past has struggled, obviously since the rework things have changed. But like the combo of just getting discorded / slayed or slept and then naded and you just explode without having that really big mobility. Like obviously you have the overrun charge that gives you CC immunity, but while you're poking and whatnot, how you feel like you can kind of like explode currently on tank. Is there a concern that a lot of the supports especially might gatekeep kind of how you can play Maga without say having a Kyrie on your team?
I think some of the changes that we're making here make him a little bit better at range as well. Some of the changes to his guns, like reducing the spread for firing both of them. He has more ammo overall now, and that damage fall off is a little bit further away. So I also he just does a bit more damage per shot too. So there's some of those changes that not only did we do survivability changes, but we also did some that were going to make Maga a little bit more efficient at some of those ranges, right? So he won't have to feel as obliged to necessarily go in and then maybe eat the Discord or eat the nade as he did before. Not feel as reliant as being close up and hitting down on both chain guns. And something that we do see is like players will also learn how to support Malga better too. I think it's the first thing we see. It's like the first step is, okay, this tank is bullying me. How do I counter them? But then the other side of it's like, well, I'm with a tank. How can I help them? How can I support them? I don't think we see as many switches on that side of it as we do on the other way, right? So hopefully over time, as players learn to play with Malga, and they'll get understand a little bit better like how to play around some of his abilities and how to time things like I want to be in cardiac overdrive too, how to time my soldier ult with that and pair it together. So that'll be something we'll be looking at as well.
So tomorrow I decide I want to queue up with a DPS hero to combo with my Malga. Which hero is it going to be? What is the best combo you have seen out of everything?
What do you like, Kenny? What do you like going in with Malga?
I mean, I'm still a big fan of the abilities working together, so Ashe is going to be my pick.
Ashe, yeah. I like soldier, as I just said, like
Yeah.
May Reaper or something. Pair it with maybe some speed, and then that's kind of just a good time to rush on in. That can be really fun.
I'm sure that May combo is a blast. If you're stuck inside there with a
I'm
May.
in here. Yeah, where are you going? Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. I'm very excited to play the hero tomorrow. That is for sure, because it sounds like this hero is going to be very, very strong. Sorry, safe side of strong. I don't want to go too far on the strong flats.
Did you get to play him much when we got back? I don't
Me?
remember.
I did. I will be honest with you. My experience on playing Mago when I got back was me falling over like 80% of the time. Now, a lot of that is what we would, I'll mention Gavin or Winter here as a skill issue for me on that one. I had no idea what I was doing. I still love that Gavin brought that up during the BlizzCon panel, the skill issue. But I found that I just struggled a bit to get, like, basically exactly what you said. Someone will go Zen, someone will go Ana, I'd fall over. That's what it felt like. It felt like I couldn't do anything. Actually, and half the time I felt like I would just like get my play to finally happen, and then I would have to reload. So I would just spend the whole time just not reloading. So I like that there was more ammo added, because I think that will actually help with that. But yeah, that was my experience when I was playing for I think I played like 5-6 hours when I got back. But I was in the same boat as you. I was like, BlizzCon was amazing, but I was like a potato. I was just like, I was like.
There was also a change. There was a bug actually in the trial where because we're tracking how many shots you do and to catch someone on fire, but that was sometimes resetting. So that also was, sort of affecting like how efficient you could be, especially like at range, with your guns being able to like alternate between left click and to right click. Sometimes that was actually resetting, so you felt like you were shooting them. You're like, hey, they're not catching on fire. What's going on? So that's also cleaned up here too.
Well, that will be good then. Yeah, I see. I didn't even realize that at the time.
Yeah. I think we were probably the one who was like, oh no, this is wrong. So yeah.
No, that makes a lot of sense on that one too. And then also like you mentioned that you're going to be starting to allow people try new heroes beforehand. Do you ever get the concern that like if the hero just is it at like a really like, okay, example, like Lifeweaver, like if you have a hero that you're trying out to like the public a little earlier, do you have any concerns that like the hero could be where Lifeweaver is at initially? Or are you okay with that, knowing that you're going to buff the hero going in? Like, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. I think part of that's giving ourselves enough time to make sure, like, hey, if there ever is that, we have enough time to adjust. But I think overall, like internally, we've also ramped up in terms of like how much testing we're doing, and how much we're working with some of our user research groups and things like that to make sure we don't run into that situation again. So those are some of the things we've been, we've done on our side. But I think this will also, be sort of like the last wall of a defense right there, where it's like, okay, well, this public's gonna get their hands on it, and then we can make some more adjustments for the release.
And you did say
for sure.
Oh, yeah. Oh, you were gonna say something on that one?
I'm sorry. I was just going to agree with Alec that I think this change to doing free hero trials, if anything, just makes it. I don't want to say easier on us, but just gives us another weapon in our arsenal to make sure that things like that don't happen before. Like I was super stoked to come back from BlizzCon and see all the reaction and know exactly here's where we can tweak things, or give Alec and the rest of the hero designers just the ammo they needed to make the changes that needed to be made. It's great.
I imagine the amount of data you get from that is like unreal. Because even like in Overwatch 1, you would have like a PTR, but like not everybody goes in the PTR. So you had like this, probably this like huge amount of data that you had that you could be like, okay, wow, we can work with this, work with that, which I think is really, really cool. I love that.
I have another one that's a little bit on the heavier side again.
Okay.
If you're cool with it.
Yeah.
So first off, I gotta say, the excitement, anticipation you've already given me, Alec, is off the charts for future seasons. But living in the now moment, looking at season 8, with Maga coming out, and there's a lot of tank buffs, which some of them are scary. Like the Winston one is like, whoa, like going through armor. Like I think that's it's gonna be really a lot of fun. But I do wonder, because tank feeling a little bit tough. I think that those are gonna be really good changes. But is there anything that we're keeping an eye on for making those tanks play easier in the short term? Or is it still mostly like a long-term plan that there's gonna be some big changes maybe to the way the game plays in the future?
Yeah, and we say in the future, like season 9, it's not that far in the future, right? But I think Ana in particular, we're probably looking at. I think Malga release and seeing how much anti sort of affects his efficiency, just how much how good he is to feel. How does he feel to play with some of those things? We made change of Discord. I think that helped out quite a bit in a few areas. So I think anti is probably one of the things that we will be keeping our eye on through this release. Overall, though, it's funny if people like say the Winston one is one of the ones they're scared of. Like Ramatra's actually been doing like pretty well in internal playtests. Just having a little bit of armor is actually really good on Ramatra. That'll be another one. A lot of these tanks, we're also looking at like how they internally how they perform against Malga and making sure that they still feel really good too.
I want to play more Ramatra.
Yeah, Ramatra looks good too, especially, and the projectile size increase I think is a little bit underrated.
Yes,
on that because
that's a big one.
Yeah, you're gonna be able to what do people call them, the Doritos. You're gonna be able to get a little bit more value with the with the Doritos on that one, which is good. Upgraded in size in that one. Also, just to talk a bit about what you said about the playtest increase. I mean, Flats and I had talked about it before. We were part of the Sombra one, and we got to see that. We got to see like where Sombra went from where Sombra was at the time, and I talked about it a little bit to where Sombra is now, which is definitely better than before. So I love that you're starting to amp up that more too, because you're gonna have these heroes just feel a lot more fun to play from the get-go, which I love that you're doing that.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's just important community interaction. It's also important because it's feedback that we need to seek, right? So I think the Sombra one went really well. I think the Roadhog one actually enlightened us on a few things as well. So sometimes it's actually not even like what's said in those sessions. It's what's not said, right? And sort of teasing out, okay, this was underwhelming. This wasn't as much well as we could have done here. So we gotta push it here in the next few months.
Which makes sense because you're looking for a reaction to something on that, and then no one mentions it. And you're like, well, that's not good because we were hoping this would be the reaction. No one said a word.
A little bit, yeah, a little bit. I think that was our initial experience with some of the Roadhog stuff because there was some stuff we were trying with allied healing. So Take a Beer was originally like healing your allies in a radius, and we had done a lot of internal testing where it's just like, hey, no one's taking advantage of this. And some players, and when players would, they would have actually a lot of allied healing, but their overall healing numbers were probably actually similar. So it was really volatile in terms of like if players were noticing. So we want to make sure we got it in the hands of like these top tier Roadhog players, and it was still sort of the same thing. It was like, oh yeah, it's just kind of like incidental, and it was just like, well, that's not really what Overwatch is about. So we got to make sure it's like it's very clear, understandable, and everyone immediately knows how to like play with it and play around it. And so that was one of the things I think that helped out there. But the Sombra one had a bunch of other stuff, as you mentioned too.
That's awesome. And do you actually, I got lost. Flats, go ahead. I had something.
I was gonna say, do you mind if we ask about the Sombra one? Because I personally thought the Sombra rework. Okay, so when we played it, I was like, yeah, I don't know about this one. But then after the changes, I was like, wait, this is actually pretty good. And I think a lot of people in the community loved it. It was like, this is probably one of the best reworks we've ever seen. And then recently in the patch that's going to be coming out is the EMP change for the longer lockout.
Mm-hmm.
Could you go into maybe a little bit of like on like the thought process behind it / like where you want to go with Sombra and whatnot?
Yeah, I think the EMP change is really to make the ability feel more pointed and play into her hero fantasy. Is like, hey, EMP, felt really kind of muddled in terms of like how much damage it was doing versus what is the lockout time and like where the value is coming from. So we want to make sure it's like more about the lockout time here. Sombra overall, I think one of the things that we were nervous about was it's this hero with stealth, and when we talk about, hey, yeah, what we're going to do in the rework is actually give her permanent stealth. So it was like one of those things where it's like, oh yeah, moving that as passive was actually pretty scary. But I think overall we went in a place where definitely feeling more like an assassin, definitely feeling like playing with her, she can be a lot more active, a lot more in the team fights and things like that, and capable. So we're feeling pretty good. I think the thing that we saw the most actually from that one in particular was how popular she still is. New players were just latching on to Sombra. Not new players necessarily to Overwatch, but players that weren't sort of playing Sombra before. And it was like, oh, wow, okay, is this more of a thing that's in the first week of the summer rework because it's a new big thing of the season, or is it something that's going to sustain? And we saw over time, it's like, oh, no, players actually really love playing this version of Sombra. She's not as niche as she was before. So we're pretty happy with, in terms of that, where she ended up and just seeing a lot more people get on the hero.
How you feeling about Pigpen so far? seeing the usage of Pigpen, because I'll be honest with you, when I play Roadhog, I just say I mildly inconvenience them when I play Hog. I'll be honest with you. So I'm curious to see where you're at with Pigpen and then how you've been feeling about that.
Yeah, feel pretty good. I think Pigpen overall, there's probably some things we want to look at in terms of how it has a lot of where its value is centered right now is, amplifying your damage and confirming kills, right? And we'll be looking at some things maybe down the road. I think no immediate plans, but does it have more value than that, right? In terms of the duration, in terms of some other things, but I think that's where most of its value is centered around, and hopefully there can be a little bit more over time.
Which makes sense. I mean, I'll be honest with you. Yeah. My initial reaction sometimes to abilities will change over time. For example, I remember when Vortex was released, I was like, wow, that's an ability. And then now Vortex, a year later, is a pretty good ability. You see the value in it. So I was just curious on where you're at with Pigpen on that one, because I'm sure that could change in 6 months. Pigpen might be going, why am I getting Pigpen? This is ridiculous. Nerf Pigpen. You know what I mean? Like, so.
For a long time, you could destroy it actually, but we destroyed after it popped, right? But one of the changes we made pretty late was making sure that didn't happen, because there was already a ton of deployables and things like that already present in the meta. So yeah,
that's also a good change, that too, because that would have made it a lot worse. You're just like, all right, well, that was fun.
Yeah, you take damage for like a second, then you destroy. It's like, that wasn't really as good as we liked back then.
Heck yeah.
I got one last maybe heavy hitter to finish us off, or get close to finishing us off. And I thought of it because of the Roadhog, because when you swap Hog, here it comes, the Orisa comes out, the Ana comes out, everything comes running. But there was a change this season for the ult charge change, from 25 to 15, I think. I like that change. I think it's really good. Punishes a little bit more for the counter swap. But I was wondering if maybe you're able to like even expand upon it and be like, it's something that we're looking at, or because I think you said something really interesting earlier. It's most people swap based on what they have instead of swapping on what you have, and so like, playing with Mog, it's like, oh, we can go Lucio, Kiriko and run in here, but actually they have a Roadhog, so I'm gonna go Ana instead, and like, screw that, I'm not doing that. So just wondering if there's more changes possibly in the future, / like what are the hopes for this ult charge change?
Yeah, I think we talked about 15% and whether that was even a value that was worth keeping at, right? I think that was one of the things we talked about a little bit, but overall that's still pretty significant. Whenever we do hero adjustments, whether it be 10 to 15% on their ult, like that changes a lot, right, in terms of the frequency of everything. So we're gonna. We like that decreases some of the friction from switching, like having some of that preserved. I think it's pretty good, where you don't have to feel as you trade everything. But at the same time, I think it's something, there's player feedback. Like counter swapping comes up all the time, right? So hopefully we can land in a spot where that still feels like it's not necessarily the case. I think in Overwatch, it is one of the main functions and mechanics of the game. But we'll look, I think, big picture. I think there's some stuff we'll be trying internally, and we might even do some wacky tests with that sort of look at, hey, what does swapping mean in the game? Is this something that's on? Is it something that you like have to spend a token for, right? Is it something that it's more of a currency rather than being as free form as it is right now? Is there like nothing planned, right? But is there something like with bans and picks where your hero pool is more limited, but you've also banned some stuff? I think there's going to be a number of things that we're going to try and just see how swapping comes into play with some of those other more structural changes to the game, right? So yeah, I don't think we're done evaluating like what it means to swap in Overwatch, at least not yet. Yeah.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Yeah, I like that. I like to hear that, like, you're still like willing to keep trying all this different stuff, even if it may never be in the game. Like, you're just trying to see how that will feel. I feel like, so we have a couple minutes left. I feel like I just have to ask, because I get asked every day about this hero, Genji. Anything with Genji? Just anything in general.
Not from. Kenny, what do you got on Genji?
I'm always vying for more Genji buffs. Alec kind of has to shut me down when I ask for those. Same with Josh, but Alec, you're probably the best person to answer these hard ones.
I think right now, like, we're fairly happy with Genji, but I think we'll still be looking at his ultimate like long term and seeing if there's anything we can do to make it change necessarily how it works with Nano and some of the breakpoints there, but also still make it feel really good to use on its own. So it's a hard task, but it's something we have some ideas for that we're trying internally right now, and we'll see if those if they end up in the game in the next few months or not.
Kenji's kind of in that same pool as Wrecking Ball for where we're evaluating what needs to change, if anything.
Yeah.
Wow, that was actually a lot more than I expected an answer on that one. I was glad I asked about that. That was.
You just wanted me to say nerf Genji and then.
Well, I mean, I was going to say
the...
out of principle, it has been a while, right? So you just got to nerf Genji just out of the memes, whether it's even 0.0001 damage. You just got to throw it in there just to go with the initial meme on that one.
Like wait, one shuriken, so it's like odd numbered at the end.
God,
I love that. Well, you know what? I think we're at a pretty good spot right now to where I am happy with how the discussion went today. I really appreciate you both coming on and playing pinball with Flats and I, because we're all over the place with our questions. There's no rhyme or reason. We'll go from Mauga to Genji to some random discussion about something. But seriously, thank you so much for answering the questions. These are always a ton of fun, and it's always my favorite when I don't even realize it's been an hour. Because I feel like we just went through this in an hour, and I didn't even realize that. I was like, Megan has to let us know we have a 10-minute warning 10 minutes ago because we're just having a blast. So thank you so much. Flats, do you have anything else you'd like to ask?
No, I'm kind of worried what's at my door from that guy ringing my doorbell for like 5 minutes. I'm still thinking about that.
I know what it is, actually.
You know? How do you know?
Because I'm getting the same thing that you're getting, so that's how I know.
Wait, what? Okay,
Yeah, I'll tell you after. But seriously,
right.
Thank you so much, Alec. Thank you so much, Kenny, for joining us. Let people know where they can follow you or any of that, all that stuff. I'll let you.
I'm just gonna end. I hope everyone has a great time. Mauga tomorrow. Honestly, it's always a special time for us to see the release of a hero. So I hope all of you enjoy him tomorrow, and we'll be looking at all the feedback everywhere. We'll be checking it out. So I hope you all have fun too, like streaming the hero tomorrow. So
I am going for
Looking forward
500
to it.
limbs tomorrow. That's my goal. I'm going for 500 limbs, and I'm not getting off until I get it. So I'm going to be in 15-minute quick play queues, and I'm getting 500 limbs. It might be a 24-hour. That's all I know because I'm doing it.
Jeez.
I'm excited. I can't wait. Heck yeah. Thank you so much for joining us. Seriously.
yeah. Thanks for having us. Seriously.
Thanks,
Thanks, guys.
Yeah, I had an absolute
Cheers.
blast.
See you
Have a
later.
good rest of your day.